Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Ashley?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be doing this.
I know, so am I.
How's
I'm
how's your weekend?
good. Yeah, there was supposed to be that big storm, and then Boston ended up being fine and just a little bit of rain.
I
So
know, like the big Henri didn't really do much for us here, which is fine because
yeah, yeah,
there were a lot of events happening this weekend.
I know. But well, and you actually got to be a guest.
Yes, I got to attend a wedding, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, a nice change of pace for sure.
Definitely a nice change of pace. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm laughing that we're doing this catering webinar at noon. I was like, I should have had lunch before doing this because now we're going to talk about food.
I know, seriously.
But
Well,
we're
I think
talking about
everyone's
meals.
here. So before we get started, I just want to kind of say hello to everybody. Thank you guys for being here. We're so happy to be here to chat with you all about food. Um, if you don't know much about Maven House, we are Mavinhouse Events, and we're a modern planning firm creating distinctly personal events throughout New England and the New York regions. Our team is composed of a diverse group of talented designers, producers, and logistical experts. Um, we do work with clients on like three different partnership levels. So, depending on where you are in your planning process, we probably have a partnership that would work for you based on whether you're just newly engaged or if you've been planning for a while and feel like you need help with the home stretch. We have a partnership that would work for you wherever you are in the process. So, if you want to learn more about that, check us out on our website for further details about that. And then, if you aren't familiar with myself, I'm Ashley Tangerini. I'm the North Shore based planner. Um, I've worked on the North Shore for the past 15 years. 10 years I was at a historic wedding venue right here in Ipswich. And then for about 6.5 years, I worked with one of the largest catering companies on the North Shore. Um, so I have, a perspective from both a venue management perspective and then a catering perspective now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to introduce Liz. She's fairly new to the team. So Liz, I'm going to let you take over
Yeah.
and tell everybody about yourself.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, I'm excited to be part of this webinar. Like Ashley said, I am newer to the Maven House team, but not new to events. I have been working in events for the past 8 years. I live in Cambridge and serve our Boston market. Similar to Ashley, my background is in catering, most recently in sales and event management for a large Boston caterer. And I've also had a few other touch points with weddings, working for a wedding magazine, an invitation company, and some other planners. So I'm excited to dive in today and talk about the food and dining experience,
Yeah.
um, weddings. So it'll be a
Yeah,
fun conversation today for
I know
us.
you're right. Everybody's going to need lunch after this.
So,
Well, today I'm sure you guys all know, but we're here to talk about all things food. We're going to start off by talking about how to find a caterer, how to pick a caterer, and then we're going to move into talking about all the different styles of dinner service that you can choose from um, when you're planning your wedding. There's a lot of options nowadays, and I think all of them are great for certain situations. So we're going to kind of help you navigate through that a little bit today, too.
yeah. And the first kind of topic of all of this is venue. Like, where
Mhm.
are you hosting your wedding at?
Yep.
Is it a venue that has an in-house caterer or a preferred catering list that you have to work off of, or are you hosting at your home?
Yep.
Um, to which the options are endless for catering.
Yeah, I mean, securing the venue is really what's going to kind of like drive who your caterer is, what your food options are. Um, there are some venues out there that do have an in-house chef or caterer, so once you book your venue, you've kind of already booked your caterer too, which some people love that kind of,
Yeah, all in
one-stop
one.
shop for two of the big vendors.
Yes.
But there are other venues out there that give you like a small list of options to choose from. Or like you said, if you are planning a wedding at your own home, the possibilities are endless, but that is also could be like a daunting task to some of
Yeah,
you out there.
definitely. There's a lot of factors involved when it comes to when you're planning a wedding at home and just having to bring in a caterer and essentially you're turning your home into a venue.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But just to talk about a few of the different options and just sort of what makes up your contract with your caterer, depending
Mhm.
on the venue. Ashley, as Ashley said, she's worked at venues before, and so she has a very clear idea on what this looks like. But for in-house caterers, there's always going to be, with any caterer you work with, there's always going to be a food minimum that you have to meet. And another thing to note about catering is it's the largest part of your budget because it's the food, it's the staffing, it's rentals, it'll be the bar. The caterer really covers all of those areas
Mhm.
as far as contracts go.
Yeah, and every caterer and every venue price things a little bit differently. So when you are doing your venue searches, it can be hard to kind of pick through what that initial estimate looks like or what's included in, the package. So some things for people, if you don't have a planner on your team when you are in the midst of the venue search, if you're looking at multiple options, you really want to make sure you're comparing the same things so you know what you're getting into with your overall cost. Because, Liz, you're right, it is one of the biggest costs associated with a wedding.
Yeah.
So you want to know, does this price include my linens? Does it include um, tables, chairs,
Yeah,
china,
glassware, flatware.
silverware, glassware, all that stuff? Some places do include it. Some places it's an extra cost after the fact that you're not aware of when you're signing on the dotted line.
Yeah.
Are there additional gratuities, service fees? All of those things are great questions to ask before you're paying that deposit and signing that contract.
Yeah. And it'll help just sort of, you'll see too, everything will be outlined and you'll see what's included and just kind of give you a better sense. Obviously, if you are looking at caterers to have a wedding at home, some things that you would have to keep in mind is you would be building out you would need a cook's tent. So you would be building out a kitchen that you would need to source power, water, you would need ovens, prep tables. I mean,
Yeah,
you're truly building a venue essentially at your home. So
yeah,
that's just
everything.
yeah,
Salt
something.
and pepper shakers, we've touched on this before, but a lot of people think having a wedding at home is more cost effective, but it's really not. That venue fee you're saving on, you're putting that money into the tent rental and all the equipment you need.
Restroom.
Um, and a lot of times home improvements to make your home look the way you want it to before the wedding.
Absolutely.
With a wedding at home, you really do need a seasoned caterer that is familiar with catering an event without a kitchen and four walls to work out of.
Absolutely.
Because it is a whole nother experience, and not everybody knows how to do that well.
Right. Yeah. Things will come up and you have to get creative with your setup. And just really, really be able to roll with the punches
Yeah.
when it comes to at home weddings.
Yep.
Um,
And then most venues, the bar service will be included in that venue cost or that catering cost. There are still some venues out there that if you are able to bring in your own caterer, you still might be able to bring in your own alcohol, but I'm seeing that kind of going to the
Yeah.
wayside a little bit more. That's obviously still something you'd be able to do at your own home. Um, but then you'd be needing to make sure that caterer or another company, um, you'd be hiring for bartenders and they'd be carrying liability insurance and providing you with still other things you need at the bar like glassware, ice, sodas, juices. So, um, there's just a lot of little details involved when you can do things yourself. And again, some people like that idea, but for other people, it's just too much and it's overwhelming and they can't.
And they hire a planner to do it for them.
Yes, exactly. So that's
Manage,
where we can come in and definitely help and kind of pull all those details together for you.
yeah, and manage all those details, and especially with, like Ashley was saying, with the bar, if you need to outsource liquor through a vendor, if they are charging, by consumption, or how you want to
Mhm.
put together that order,
Yeah.
and what you want to, if whether you want full bar or beer, wine, soft drinks, or just signature cocktails. I mean, there's definitely lots of ways you can go about planning for the bar, and obviously you have more flexibility if you're not if you're at your home and not at a venue. But as Ashley was saying, that comes with more responsibility as well.
Yes. I just want to say quickly to everybody listening right now, if anybody has specific questions while we're talking today, you can write your questions in the chat box, and then we'll make sure we get to all of those specific questions before we finish here today. So if there's anything pressing that you are thinking of right now, let
Let us
us
know.
know. Otherwise, we can still always schedule like a 30-minute free consult with you, like offline from today, and kind of help and talk you through any more specific details that we might not have gotten to today.
Yeah. Should we talk about food now, Ashley?
Yeah, let's talk about food.
Yes, our favorite thing.
Yes.
I was just trying to think back on some of the best vendor meals that I've had. I feel like actually I worked a wedding with you not too long ago.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was a very good vendor meal.
That was a good vendor.
The best is when we get to try the dessert,
Yeah.
in my opinion. um, but so anyway, so to talk about just sort of starting menu planning, most caterers would offer a tasting for couples to come in and get a sense, what they can do, what their options are. So that's always a great way to start the planning is to understand what food your particular caterer can serve and just get some ideas. And so what we're going to talk about today is the different styles of service. There's plated, there's family style, there's stations. If you want a heavy cocktail hour, there's definitely a lot of options.
Yes, there's a lot of options. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what makes the most sense for you. Um, if you aren't hiring a planner or you don't have a planner on your team while you're going through this process, I always recommend listening to your caterer, listening to your venue with what they're telling you with their recommendations on what works well there. They have seen these things firsthand, and I promise you, they're going to tell you if a family style dinner was just terribly awful and did not work. Maybe it was because of the size group, maybe it was whatever it was. Listen to what they're telling you and take their advice for what works well at that venue with your guest count. Food stations can be great, but if you have a large guest count and you're hitting the max capacity of a ballroom or a tent,
Right.
you might not physically have space to put those food stations. So we could sit here and say that it's our favorite thing, but not if your guest count doesn't allow it. So
Right.
it
Or the
really
space.
is, it varies from wedding to wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most traditional option is plated, and that's probably what most guests are most familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, and it's obvious. The great thing about plated is it's very precise, and you can generally offer, if you want a beef or salmon, you have options of generally a choice of which entree.
Mhm.
And then something to think about with plated, while the actual food, it's very precise in what's on the plate. It does require more staff to physically serve plated
Mhm.
dinners.
Yep.
So something to keep in mind. And it is plated dinners are obviously more of an upscale food service style. And it is something we see often, but there are other options as well. Um, I know I know family style. I'm partial to family style. I think it's the beautiful thing about family style is sitting and just sharing. I think being able to pass that dish. It's geared more towards the intimate weddings, with maybe
Yeah.
a little bit smaller of a guest count,
Yep.
um, and just being aware that family style does mean you are renting most of the time, like the platter, the serving vessels that you are serving
Mhm.
food in, unless your caterer is able to provide them. But most of the time, you're renting all those things, so that is an additional expense with family style.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, people ask like, is family style less expensive than a
Right.
plated meal? What I found in the past is because you're potentially, let's say your family style meal includes, a carved tenderloin on a platter, maybe there's a chicken option, there's a potato and a vegetable. You need to have enough of all of those things
You're
to
making
go to
more
every
food.
single table.
Mhm.
So a lot of times it's actually a little bit more expensive
Yep.
because everybody could theoretically take a piece of chicken and a piece of beef. Whereas
Yes.
if it's a plated dinner, it's just chicken, potato, and vegetable on a plate, and then someone else gets their beef, potato, and vegetable. Um, the other thing with family style is space on your guest tables. You need space to put those platters of food down once they've been passed around the table. So a lot of times you have to have less people per table when you have family style in order to actually have space at that table for
Yeah.
the platters.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you want to think about who your guests are
Yep.
if you're thinking about a family style meal. If you have a lot of older guests, I've seen them struggle like trying to pass the platter of food around.
Yeah.
Um, so those are things to think about. Same thing with a buffet. Like if you have a lot of older guests, can they get up and go through a buffet line? Is that challenging for a lot of your guests?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of factors that go into how to like thoughtfully create your menu to one, make it be the way you want it to be, but you want the guests you're inviting to this wedding to be comfortable and be able to enjoy the food as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the one other style we haven't touched on yet is stations, which there's definitely a lot of fun
Yeah.
things that you can do with stations to give a variety, and give choices as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you get the question? I feel like people don't know the difference between like a buffet and a food station a lot of times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, both, it's like you do have to prepare more food for both
Mhm.
just because like what you were saying, you don't know necessarily what a guest is going to take more of. But with stations, I mean, it's multiple setups.
Yeah.
That's what we're referring to when we say station. So, and they're
Yeah.
generally more themed too. So you can be more creative, um, with what you serve at each one.
Yeah, the way I always like try to explain it to people is like a buffet, you would go up to one
Yeah,
long
one set
table that
table.
would have all the food at it that you would be enjoying. Whereas stations might be scattered around in the tent or around in different locations in a ballroom. I think it's always very helpful to have some sort of menu card presented to your guests when there are
So they know
stations.
the
Not
options.
everybody knows that there's 4 different places to go look for an
Right.
amazing pasta station or carving station or slider bar or something like that. So definitely having that information somewhere for people to be able to see and get excited about that food is definitely helpful, I think, when you're having food stations.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and another style that we I know have talked about briefly too before is if you just want a cocktail, more of a cocktail reception,
Yeah.
heavy past hors d'oeuvres, or grazing tables, just a more casual fare, and just really committing to that.
Yes, that's the big thing.
All or nothing if you go for cocktail style.
Yeah, I mean, again, in the right setting, I love a cocktail style reception. I think usually the more traditional guests, like let's say dad, he's wondering, am I going to have enough food to eat? Like, am I going to be able to feel full at the end of the day?
Yep.
But I think there's ways to have food available for your guests throughout the entire reception, but just different kinds of food throughout the day. So
Yeah, it's a good
maybe,
variety.
yeah, so like let's say you're getting married at a church and your all your guests are coming to the reception from a church. Maybe you have a great raw bar out and available like as guests arrive, but people trickle in and they're trying to, get their bearings and use the restroom and get a cocktail. To have 10 past hors d'oeuvres happening at the moment one of guests arriving, not everybody might be there yet. So thinking about like layering the food throughout the day. um, Maybe we start with the past hors d'oeuvres 20 minutes after we're supposed to have started the event, and making sure the majority of the guests are there so everybody can enjoy the food.
Yes.
And then maybe like opening up a couple like fun little small plate stations, um, an
Yeah.
hour or two later in the night, and then ending with like a fun late night snack or something. So plenty of food throughout the whole day, but just not hitting your guests with it all at once to make sure they can graze and pick and enjoy, for that
Mingle.
5 hours instead of like for 1 hour and then be starving at the end of the night.
Right, exactly. It's like a continuous flow of food
Yes. And
for
I
us
think the
for
other
sure.
big thing with cocktail receptions, you have to set the stage for people. Like you have to have a variety of different seating areas, like
Like
high
lounge
top
style seating.
tables.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. You can't have assigned seating and big round banquet tables and then do a cocktail style reception. You can't like go halfway in. You gotta go all in or not.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You really have to, yeah, you really have to commit.
Yeah, because then I think your guests are confused if you
Right.
don't.
They're like, are we sitting down? Are we not sitting down?
Yeah.
Having, yeah, but doing the mixture of room for them to stand at a cocktail table, and mingle, or if they want to sit on, if you have bistro seating, lounge seating areas that are just more natural to sit and enjoy, small bites.
Yeah. And then maybe a few reserved tables for, again, for your elderly guests or your bridal party, like having a home base for those VIP people can be nice and comforting for those people. And then still a lot of seating for your guests, but not just an assigned table necessarily in that situation.
Right, right.
Okay, so Liz, someone asked thoughts on using the same caterer for rehearsal, welcome party, and the wedding day. Should you double down or should you use two different companies?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I would suggest it's really the menus that you want to make sure are different. So it's not,
Mhm.
I think having the same caterer is fine as long as it could be completely different menus, because you want your guests to enjoy a different meal. You don't want them to eat the same thing over and over again.
Yes,
So as
I
long as
totally
you have a
agree.
different meal, I think, having the same caterer, I mean, that's fine. And in some ways it might even be better, because if it's at a venue, if it's at a home, they already have a lay of the land, they already know what to
Mhm.
expect, they've already been involved in, all the logistics, and
Yeah.
it honestly would make it easier from a production standpoint. So, but
Mhm.
definitely recommend doing very different menus.
Yeah,
for
I
guests.
totally agree. You want two different experiences for your guests throughout the weekend, for sure.
Yes.
And then I guess you could carry that into like a brunch the next day. Like, would you use the same person? A
Yeah.
lot of times the brunch might be a lot more casual, and like a full service caterer might just be too much for people the next day.
Always
They
drop off.
Yeah.
Keeping for drop off catering for the brunch, and just keeping it casual, as people are probably sleeping in a little bit
Yeah.
on the morning after the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
I'm just looking if we have another question here.
I know.
About signature cocktails. Are they tacky, or do you love them? I mean,
Uh,
I think it's a great option. I love signature cocktails because I think it's cute. You can do a his and her
yep.
option. And also, just again, going back to the bar, if you wanted to offer just beer and wine, and then you could complement it with the two signature cocktails, or
Mhm.
just sort of having that dedicated go-to option,
Yep.
is helpful from a service standpoint, as a guest. If you're like, I
Yeah.
don't, I don't know what I want to drink, and that just gives you an option, right away.
I love them too. I mean, I think again, I would take the recommendations from your caterer and or venue on a lot of caterers might already have like a suggested list that they're presenting to you. They've kind of thoughtfully planned these options out, thinking about how fast it is to make the drinks, can they batch them beforehand? You don't want a drink you find online with like 20 ingredients that they
Huddle.
have to like muddle. That'll just create a line at the bar, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
Um, so I would definitely suggest taking their recommendations. But I love the his and hers. I love passing them right at the end of the ceremony or as guests arrive from a ceremony to help alleviate that first initial like crush of a line at the bar. Um,
absolutely.
and then it kind of, they're pretty to pass around and people see what they are. And even if they don't take one right away, they could order one at the bar later on. And it kind of like makes them known and makes people know it's like a thing that's an option. And I love them.
Yeah, that's a question actually I think I get a lot too, Ashley, is just, obviously no one wants to have a long line at their bar,
Mhm.
after the ceremony. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's definitely an easy way to alleviate that, and to be passing, whether it's Prosecco or white and rosé,
Yeah.
um, just to sort of get a drink in guest's hand right away. And then no one has to wait in a long line,
Yeah.
because no one wants to wait for their drink.
Everybody appreciates that. The guests, the bartenders, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So one other thing that I still wanted to chat about was, dessert, because I
Yeah.
think that's another popular. I mean, that's my personal favorite
Yes.
time. But I think a lot of couples, some want a wedding cake, some don't, and just sort of navigating the options there. I think, we've seen a lot of couples, not necessarily have a formal cake cutting anymore, but more
Mhm.
of a kind of quiet, just intimate cutting of their cake for the photo, and then having a separate, dessert station that can be really anything that you enjoy,
Yeah.
and that you want to serve.
Yeah, I love the dessert station and the coffee station. Even if you are doing a more formal, like plated dinner, usually a standard plated dinner, you're going to have two courses, like a salad course and your entree course. If you have formal served coffee and dessert, it definitely adds a good amount of time to your dinner hour. And it seems like these days everybody is just trying to get to dancing as fast as they can. Um, so the dessert station kind of lets dinner end, right after the entrees, lets people dance for a little bit, and then you know have a little something sweet whenever they want to until the night's over, as opposed to maybe they missed cake getting served, or it's just been, sitting at their table for 2 hours and they didn't even
Right.
know that it was there.
Yeah, it happens.
Or there's just like a cold cup of coffee sitting at their table that was poured for them that they totally missed. The coffee station, you can have, hot coffee at any point in time.
Yeah.
And the dessert station gives you options. You can do like a ton of different things at
I
it. It
know.
doesn't.
I've seen like donut bars.
Mhm.
I mean, cake. I think, cake is obviously the go-to, but you could do donuts, you could do cookies. I've seen ice cream sandwiches.
Yep.
Lots of different things that you can do for desserts, and incorporating, what you like as a couple too. If there's something that you had on your first date, or something that you eat on a regular basis that you want to serve. Pies were another one actually I've done as
Hmm.
well for dessert, a pie station.
Yeah, that's fun for the fall.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of
Yeah,
different.
there's really like no rules around the dessert anymore. Like you can do whatever you want, which is really cool. And it's just a unique way to like make it be something that is important to the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find that a lot with the late night snacks too. And this might be a good place to kind of like end the conversation with the late night snack talk.
Yeah,
Obviously, that would come out at the end of the night. But that's a fun place to do something that like means something to the couple.
yeah, totally. And I feel like food trucks, like more and more often couples are asking about food trucks too, and
Mhm.
just having a truck come in and serve, whether it's like French fries and onion rings,
Yep.
or cheeseburger, just that greasy food that everyone
Yeah.
wants by 11 o'clock at night. It's a great option. Or popcorn too has been another
Mhm.
popular request for a food truck.
Yeah. I think it's a good way. Like, I find a lot that with couples planning, the couple themselves might want to do a more unique menu that's comfort style food, or, things like that are relatable to eat, like a slider bar, a mac and cheese bar. But usually mom or dad comes in and kind of like puts the kibosh on that for actual like wedding food for dinner.
Right.
But that's a good way to still have it as part of the day, and compromise with with the parents and the couple.
Yes.
Um, Still everybody gets what they want, but try to keep everybody happy at the same time.
Everyone definitely has their own preferences on what they like to eat, uh,
Yes,
which makes sense. I mean, you want to be well fed, and you want to make sure that your guests are taken care of.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. So if there's any other questions, I don't think I see any other questions in here, but we would love to, if you have any other questions, feel free to DM us on Instagram. The Maven House Instagram is Mavinhouse_events. Ashley's Instagram handle is Ashley_Mavenhouse. And then I can be found at Liz_Mavenhouse on Instagram. So we'd love to follow up and chat with anyone who was on here, and talk about wedding plans further, and catering. You can also head to our website, mavenhouse.com. If you want to book a complimentary consultation, you can do that online, as well as browse our portfolio and our 3 planning partnerships.
Yes, and if you're interested, we do send out like a back of the house monthly newsletter via email. If that's something you're interested in getting in the future, you can send Liz or myself a message and we can get you added to that list. And we also have a YouTube channel with these webinars where they live after we have them. So you can see past conversations that we've had, where we talk about, different topics other
Yeah.
than catering.
Lots of good content there. We have
Yeah.
some on design, more in depth on the venue search and stationery. So there's lots of good things on the YouTube page to check out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. And Liz, it was so great to chat with you.
Yes.
I'm sure I'll see you in person soon enough.
I know. I think I'm working on another one of your weddings in the coming weeks. So
Yes,
we'll
I'm
see you
excited.
soon.
That's going to be a good one. Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.